Hello crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have another Halloween card, this time for the Lawnscaping Critters Galore challenge. So I'll be using exclusively Lawn Fawn stamps and dies here on my card today. I'm starting by creating a background with an ombre effect to cut out my letters. I want to cut out my own custom sentiment using I think they're called Kohl's ABCs, one of their ABC dies, and so I've decided to create an ombre effect with my Copic markers, and I'm going to color a small strip of white cardstock with some different colors of yellows and yellow reds from Copics. So I'm using YR68, I think YR38 and YR16, starting with the darker color and blending up. It's just a really fast, messy blending because you're not going to see all those lines as each one is going to be cut apart. And so I'm just going to cover enough that I think will fit the sentiment. I cut my strip of paper wide enough that it will fit the sentiment. And with this, I'm going to have to cut it out several times because their ABCs only come with one of each letter. And so my expression today is going to be boo to you. And so I'm going to need to run it through several times to get enough O's. So you see I'm just going to lay out the dies on here. It doesn't really matter what order I put them in or anything like that because I'm not going to use the negatives. I'm just going to use what's left. I'm just going to use the positive part of the die. You see that I actually kind of sketched it out on that little piece of paper there to think about how I would want my card overall to look, making sure that I have all the right letters and how I'd want to place it. I'm deciding to kind of place it all in one straight line as opposed to, stacking the sentiment offset on each one. So I've cut out all the letters now, and I'm picking a stitched rectangle stackable that will fit it to create a center card element. And after I die cut it, I die cut it with for Georgia Pacific cardstock, simple white cardstock. I'm going to add some stars to the background here. I used to have the stars from Teeny Tiny Backdrops. I mean, I still have them, but I used to use those a lot. But then I decided to get the Make-A-Wish stars because they are kind of sprinkled and scattered throughout, as opposed to the Teeny Tiny Backdrops were in a straight line. So I think that the stars from Make-A-Wish look more like an actual night sky, and so I'm choosing to use them. But either one would, create a similar effect, whichever one you have on hand. So I'm just going to stamp it with Versamark ink and clear emboss it, which will leave the stars looking white. I chose to use the stamp vertically as opposed to horizontally, so I'd only have to stamp 2 times. It turns out to be pretty simple to line up this stamp, but I did want to make sure that I could see where I was lining up the next stamping, so I decided to heat emboss the first stamp, then after it was done go back and stamp a second time, so that way the stars wouldn't overlap each other. It's not important that they are lined up exactly, but I do think if they overlap that wouldn't have a nice effect. In terms of heating up the the clear embossing powder, I get a lot of warping, and I think it's because I tend to use a thinner cardstock, and so if you're not happy with the way the warping looks, I would suggest maybe a thicker cardstock. And people say that if you leave your heat gun off to the side a little bit first, then there's less warping. But generally, even if it's warping a little bit when you first use it, like when you first heat emboss it, over time that will kind of go away and flatten out, and also your adhesive will help adhere to the card. You see that I keep my embossing powder in a large container like most people do and kind of sprinkle out with a spoon. You could use coffee filters too. I just think with clear embossing, because I use it so often, it's better to put it in the container, which is, an idea that as many crafters I got from Jennifer McGuire. And now I'm going to create the rest of the background. Because I clear embossed it, it's going to create a resist, and I can use Distress inks over it, and the stars will stay white. I'm using Faded Jeans, Seedless Preserves, and Dusty Concord Distress inks. I have 4 mini Distress ink blending tools because I tend to use colors at 3 at a time, and a pack only comes with 2, and so I thought it would be worth it to get an extra pack because I don't want to have to keep changing out the pad on the Distress tool because it can get all over your hands and spread to different parts of the project. So here I just put one Distress pad on the bottom of each tool, and I'm spreading it out. I do kind of like a dabbing, twisting motion. Some people kind of come from off the paper and blend on, but I like to put a lot of ink on there when I want it to blend, so I don't have any problem with tapping it right to the paper, as with the new tool, you don't get those hard lines that you used to get with the old tool, so I think it's less important that you come from off the page and blend on. I think, you know, any way that you want to apply it pretty much works with this new tool because, like I said, there are no hard edges, and the more ink you put on, the easier it blends anyway. So I just liberally applied all of the ink and then went back all over it with seedless preserves to kind of blend everything out. In terms of placing the sentiment on, I thought that it was best to start with the middle letters and then move to the outside. Whereas if I had started with the B and I put it over too far, then everything wouldn't look centered. So I started first with the T-O in the most center and then worked out from there. To adhere the letters on, I'm just using some Glossy Accents. Glossy Accents works as a great adhesive. And after I put those on, I didn't think they really stood out enough. I like the way that the orange pops against the purple and the blue, but I wanted to make it stand out even more, so I used this Wink of Stella glitter pen to cover all of the letters in glitter. And then I'm also going to put a coating of Glossy Accents over everything to make it shiny and again stand out more and give it some dimension. With the Glossy Accents, you want to make sure that you don't get any air bubbles, and so as you spread it on, if you're seeing any air bubbles, you can just take a pin and pop the air bubbles. Sometimes it's a good idea to test your Glossy Accents off to the side and make sure that they're flowing nicely before you bring it to your project so you don't get any kind of splooge out of the Glossy Accents. So next I'm going to be using the critters from Spooktacular, and so I'm finally bringing in that critters part of the challenge from the landscaping challenges. And I'm going to stamp the bat, the ghost, and the little cat. I'm going to do some really simple Copic coloring on these. These do come with, they don't come with dyes, they have dyes available. I chose not to get them because I know that I only use my Halloween sets for a limited amount of the time of the year, and I'm okay with fussy cutting them for the couple of times a year that I use them. So I'm not worried about coloring the lines because I'm going to fussy cut them out. And also I think that when you fussy cut them out, since you don't have to color in the lines, it actually kind of balances out the time-saving aspect of die cutting. So I don't always pick up the dyes that match. I'm using warm grays to color the bat and the cat. I like to use the warm grays when I'm coloring living things, and then I like to use the cool grays when I'm coloring other gray objects, like I'm going to use it for the ghosts. Ghosts aren't living, but also like the robots from Lawn Fawn. I think that the cool gray makes more sense for them, but I don't like cool gray as much for living things. And so I'm using W7 and W5 mostly on the cat and the bat, and I'm choosing to add the shadows on the bottom. Because this isn't actually a scene card, it's not as clear where the light is coming from, but I'm just going to keep it consistent and have the shadows on the bottom and the light on the top. And like I said, I'm going to use cool grays for the ghost. I'm using C3 as my darker color and C1 to blend it out. The C markers are also very useful for creating simple shadows on the bottom. And recently I decided though to kind of expand my collection of C's and get the C3 because it helps to color some different creatures, and it worked well for the robots from Lawn Fawn. Anyway, I decided I want to add one more little thing to kind of pull in the orange and the other colors from the card. So I decided to add this hat for the cat. I think it would look cute on most of the critters, but I think that if I put too many hats, it would just overwhelm the card, and so I'm going to stick with it just on the cat. I'm using YR68 and YR65 to color in the main part of the hat, and then I'm going to tie in the purple and the yellow on the belt, on the hat buckle and the hat band around, adding the purples. I'm trying on this to kind of give it that feeling of roundness by adding shadows on the outer edges of the hat and keeping it lighter in the middle. Once I have colored all of them, like I said, I would fussy cut them out. They're actually pretty easy to fussy cut. There is some small details on the cat, like the tail, but when you're only using them a couple times a year, I think it's worth it to just fussy cut them out. I'm going to be using Glossy Accents to adhere most of this. Glossy Accents, again, are really strong adhesive, and they're liquid glue is easier when these little tiny elements than like a tape runner. And I can't adhere everything quite yet because the glossy accents on the letters are still drying, so I'm just going to glue on the hat for the cat and put it aside for now. I'm also going to use pop dots to pop up the ghost. I thought about popping up everything, but I think with the tail and the wings, they might be more delicate, and I don't want it to get ruined as I mail the card, so I'll just glue them flat to the card. Once I get all of these elements on, this is the main part of my card, the main detail, but I am going to mount it onto another stitched rectangle die, and I used the paper from Into the Woods to cut a slightly larger rectangle, and I'll adhere this panel onto that, and that will be it for my card today. I hope you enjoyed this card in my Halloween card series, and thank you for putting up with my kind of rough voice. I have a cold right now and I'm getting over it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe to my channel, and thank you for watching. Bye.